Hello and welcome to Freddie's channel. This is LJ. Freddie is still able, so I am going to do a video today for a chat. The topic today is what is his name? So, really, just open chat discussion on what is God's name. Do we know what it is? Is it important? Is there any way that we can know? Is it hidden? What is his name? Some people assert that his name is Yahweh, others that it's Jehovah. There are other renderings. There are, if you listen to the Hebrew Israelites, they often have 3 or 4 different ways of being able to say God's name. But the two main ones, I think that most people would agree, the two main postulations for the name of God are Jehovah or Yehovah, depending on whether you want to use the J or not, or Yahweh. And so in this video, really, I just opening it up. You can come on and have a chat, and we'll look at some of the evidence for both of them. Is there any evidence for either rendering? Is there anything that would give us kind of information, give us some kind of clue as to what God's name is? How do we pronounce it? Is it even important that we know God's name? I know that there are a lot of people that actually say that if it was important, God would let us know his name. But then I think that he does let us know his name. I think it is recorded in scripture. There are places. Now, how you pronounce it is maybe less important than whether he has a name and whether we can know it. But yeah, so feel free to come on up and have a discussion. We've got Gavin already here to try and push back on me. I obviously have my own understanding of what God's name is. Now, I've recently done a bit of a study into this, and I've actually changed my mind. Did I change my mind? Maybe not so much that I kind of completely changed it. I think that I was swaying towards Yahweh. But I kind of used both Jehovah and Yahweh. But I was kind of more swayed towards Yahweh because this is the general consensus of modern scholarship would say that Yahweh was the correct name. And so that would be my general understanding. But okay, I'm going to do a study on this and I'm going to look into the evidence. I want to know. I'm interested now. Whether it's important or not to you, that's up to you to decide that. It was important to me. I felt like I wanted to know the name of God. I wanted to know what the evidence was and whether we could know the name of God. And so I did a bit of a study over the last couple of weeks of this, and I have come to the conclusion personally that I believe that the name of God should be pronounced Yehovah. And I also believe that I should know that name and that I will use that name. And like I say, whether other people utilize that name, whether they want to call him Hashem or Adonai or whatever, that's fine. But this is just going to be an open discussion on for people to come in, have a discussion, present some evidence. If you've got evidence for your position, come and present it. Come and show us why you believe this. If you don't believe it's important, come and tell us that. So we're just going to have a discussion, and hopefully, if you're want to come up and have that discussion, you can do. Maybe if you're not interested in coming up, then just put put it into the comments and we'll have a look at it. But Gavin is here. The bald eagle is landed, so here he comes.
The bald eagle.
The bald eagle has landed. So, hello, Gavin. How are you?
Hi. Hello, LJ. My my friend, my beautiful friend. I'm wearing a hat for Freddie. Like homage to Freddie. And can I say I'm really looking forward to the session. And I'm not here to challenge you. I really, it's a very important topic. Being one of an ex Jehovah's Witness with an emphasis on Jehovah. And I must tell you, I was also leaning toward the name of Yahweh. So I'm all ears. Honestly, I just want to, thanks for including me. It's very gracious of you and very trusting of you. I just want to hear what you have to say, and I want to assure you, I'm going to listen with open ears. I'm very, very, very excited to hear what you've discovered, LJ.
Okay, well, really, I want it to be more of a discussion. I am going to present some of the information that I've found, what I've studied, what I've looked at. But feel free to interject at any point. I don't want this to be really just a kind of a teaching, rather a discussion, showing some information, showing some of the evidence or the studies that I've done. So Sister Becky has said, God has many names. I'll call him Abba. Now, I do believe that Abba is a perfect. You can call him Abba. You can call him Father. I don't believe that's his name. I believe that is more of a kind of a title, or even more of maybe a role that God has, that that you could really say that, because obviously. I think that God does state that he has a name. I think if you look at Exodus 3:15, if you have a look at Exodus, so there's quite a few, like Isaiah 42:8, many many verses that God actually states his name. I mean, the Yud Hey Vav Hey is found over 6,800 times in the Old Testament. So, okay. So she says, I agree. It's not his name, but like I said, he does have many names, and that is a fact. I don't believe that he has many names, and that is, I am. If you believe he has names, many names, that's okay. I believe he has one name. I believe he has many titles. There are many things that he goes by or is known by. But I do believe that there is only one specific name that God has, and I believe that is the Yud Hey Vav Hey, however that is pronounced. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at some of the kind of the evidence that shows why I believe that this is Yehovah rather than Yahweh. And what I was surprised, what I was surprised when I looked at it, is that there is no evidence for Yahweh. There's just really the evidence for Yahweh is it's very conjectural, and it's really the conjectural understanding of a guy called Gesenius in the 19th century. Now his work is fundamental in the Hebrew lexicons. So his work. He was a German scholar, but he learned Hebrew, and his work today is still used for the underlying kind of understanding of the Greek, the Hebrew grammar that is used by many of the lexicons, Brown, Driver, Briggs. They're based upon the Gesenius's work. And what you'll see is in Gesenius's work is that he conjectured the Yahweh because he based his understanding on a guy, a 4th, 5th century late church father. You could say he was a late kind of church father, although obviously 4th and 5th century still early, but late in comparison to other church fathers. And he wrote, his name was Theodoret, and he wrote that the Samaritans call the name of God Yahweh, and the Israelites, he said, or the Jews, call him Asa. So what we have there is that this 4th century writer is utilizing a Samaritan understanding of the name of God, and he's used that as part of his understanding of how we pronounce God. But you'll notice that in that writing by Theodoret, he actually states that the difference there was the Samaritans. He's basing it on the Samaritan understanding and reading and pronunciation of the name of God, rather than the Jewish understanding. Because in the 4th century, the Jews were not speaking the name of God. They were not using the Yud He Vav He, the pronunciation of that. They were using other terms. Now, what Theodoret said was that the name was that they were using at the particular time. I mean, today they use Hashem or Adonai, but back then they were using a term called Asa. So he based it on the Samaritan understanding. Now, the problem with that is that we have writings. Now, Josephus recorded that. So we know that in the 2nd century BC, right? This might get a bit complicated for a second, but in the 2nd century BC, the Jews were being persecuted by the Greeks after they kind of conquered the land, the area, and under the Greek Empire. The Jews were being persecuted, and they were basically being told that they couldn't use the name of God. They weren't allowed to observe the Sabbath. Basically, what the Greeks wanted to do was kind of assimilate the Jews into their kind of religion. And so if they could stop them using the name of God, then they could just say God, and then who knows what God we're talking about. You can just, within a couple of generations, God just becomes God, rather than kind of specific God that the Jews were worshipping. And so they would persecute them and try and stop them from using the name. They would try to stop them from observing the Sabbath, following their laws, and all of this kind of these kind of things. And the Samaritans, who were understood at that time to kind of be Jews, although they weren't really Jews, they were being persecuted as well. And they wrote a letter to the king at the time and said, don't persecute us along with those Jews, because we're not really Jews. We're actually Medes and Persians that have been brought to the land. And we find this in 2 Kings chapter 17. And they actually said, we're not Jews, so don't persecute us along with the Jews. And we don't even call upon the name of God. We don't call him by a name. We have a temple, but it is not dedicated to a specific name. It's dedicated to the God of no name, basically. And you can find this in the writings of Josephus, in Antiquities of the Jews, and I can show this in if need be, but I'll just quickly go over it. And they wrote this letter to the king and said, "Look, we don't persecute us along with those dirty Jews," is what they actually said. If you stop persecuting us, we'll actually dedicate our temple to your God, to Zeus. And so that's what they did. They dedicated their temple, which they were at the time was kind of no named, but they were following. They were kind of following Jewish religion, but they weren't. They didn't have a name, and they weren't utilizing the name Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. So they utilized Zeus. Now, what then happens is that the Romans come in and they take over the Greek Empire, and the Romans take over, and Zeus becomes Jupiter. And Jupiter is Yahweh Peter. Okay, Father Yahweh. And so the Samaritans then take on this name, Yahweh. So they then pronounce the name of their God, Yahweh. Rather, so, but in Latin, that would be Yahweh. Okay, and we know of writings, Jove. We say the word Jove today, but that's a shortened version of basically of Jupiter, Jove, and that would be pronounced Yahweh in Old Latin, because the W used to be the V used to be a W in Latin, and we know that, and that's recorded. So the name that Theodoret actually heard from the Samaritans, not the Jews, is the name that he recorded, and that is the name that Gesenius uses. And it is Gesenius's writings of the 19th century that modern scholarship follows, because he is the kind of godfather of the Hebraic grammar and language of all of the lexicons that are utilized. So modern scholarship, there's no question about it. Modern scholarship says that the name of God is Yahweh. But that is the evidence for Yahweh. And the counter evidence against Jehovah is just factually incorrect. The way that the argumentations against Jehovah are utilized are incorrect. Now, I'm skipping over quite a bit of information here, and hopefully, people will come in and we can discuss this. But what modern scholarship believes is that the name Jehovah is a hybrid name. It's an impossible hybrid name of the Tetragrammaton and the vowel pointing of Adonai or Elohim. So obviously, until the Masoretes come and they do the vowel pointing, original manuscripts of the Jewish, the Hebrews, they wouldn't utilize the vowel pointings. They would speak the vowels, but they didn't write vowels. So you would have to read and know what the vowels were for a particular word, which Jews would do because they know their scriptures. So they know when a word is meant to be pronounced one way or whether it's meant to be pronounced another way. Because often Hebrew words, they might have the same consonants, but the two words would be completely different when you put the vowels in. But so you would have to know the difference when a vowel pointing was going to be one particular way or another way. And so it is understood and believed that the vowel pointing of Adonai is inserted into the Tetragrammaton, and that the translators of like the King James Version didn't know of this understanding. They would put the vowel pointing in of Adonai because they didn't want you to pronounce the name. So they would utilize the vowel pointing of Adonai, which would indicate to you that you should read Adonai rather than Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever, because you weren't meant to say the name. And then at other times, they would put the vowel Elohim. And so, apparently, assertion. And so they thought that the vowel pointing that says Adonai is how you were meant to pronounce the name of God. And so they came up with Jehovah. Now, the problem with that is that anybody can tell that if you take the vowel pointings of Adonai and put that into the Tetragrammaton, that doesn't make Yehovah. Okay, that would make Yahovah, not Yehovah, because Adonai, Yehovah. You can just hear the difference. So if they had, that would work. That argument could have worked if they would have inserted in Yahovah, which they don't do. So the argumentation that this was created by the translators of the King James Version. Now, the King James utilizes the word Yehovah 7 times, 4 times as the name of God, and 3 times as a place name within Scripture. So the argumentation that the King James translators created this name is false. So there are others that kind of realized this and tried to push this back a little bit to have this created by a guy called Galantius in the 1520. So it wasn't created by the King James translators. It was created by a guy called Galantius. Now, the problem with that is that we have much earlier renderings of Jehovah than 1520. Now, what has happened recently that that many people didn't know, because it has only happened in the last maybe 8 years or so, that we now have, thanks to a guy called Nehemiah Gordon, we now have manuscripts where the vowel pointing for Yehovah is found in the Hebrew manuscripts. And that includes the Aleppo manuscript, it includes the Leningrad manuscript, and all of the major Hebrew manuscripts. They all have the vowel pointings of Yehovah, not the vowel pointings of Adonai inserted into the Tetragrammaton, which they do have, not the vowel pointings of Elohim inserted into the Tetragrammaton, which they do have in places, but the vowel pointings of Yehovah are found in the manuscripts. In fact, in the Aleppo manuscript, it is found, amazingly, 7 times. So, years, over 2,000 manuscripts, Hebrew manuscripts, that all have the vowel pointings of Yehovah. Now, normally, the vowel pointings would, so there are 3 vowel pointings: the shva, the kola, one was often not included, so that you wouldn't be able to pronounce the name. You can't pronounce the where at least one time in those manuscripts the 3 vowel pointings for Yehovah are found. So we don't have any the vowel pointings for Yahweh, not one. But we have over 2,000 with the vowel pointings for Yehovah. All right. Now you can say whether it's Jehovah or you can argue whether it's Yehovah. That's a slightly different argument. We don't need to worry about that so much, but we can discuss that if you want to, because all that really is a modern English rendering of Yehovah. So we now have available to us all these manuscripts that weren't known until around about 8 years ago. And it's only in the last, say, 4 to 5 years that we've really gone from about 50 manuscripts to 2,000. There's a team working with Nehemiah Gordon that are looking through the manuscripts, and they're finding them all over the place. In basically in a huge proportion of manuscripts that have the vowel pointing Yehovah. So we can discuss all of these individual particular pieces of information. We can get deeper into them. I'm not really I'm not trying to go too deep at the moment. I'd rather have more of a discussion about that. But we have rabbinic writings. We have rabbinic writings that talk about the hiding the name, and that the rabbis pass on the name through a ritual that is performed from rabbi to student every 7 years. That they pass on the name because it's to be hidden. Now there are a couple of different reasons why they hid that name. One of them was to avoid persecution, and so the rabbis actually talk about that the name is to be hidden from the people right now, but in the future when the Messiah comes, the name will be spoken. But the rabbis know the name, and they pass this on through a ritual. We have rabbinic writings that talk about this ritual, that they pass on this information, this name. And there are 2 main reasons that they hide this name. The first reason is that it was to avoid persecution. So they basically said, right, the general public don't speak the name, or the general Jewish public won't speak the name, but we'll hold this information and pass it on, so it will be retained. But secondly, they also didn't want the Christians to know the name of God, because there were obviously pushbacks against Jewish and Christians, and the Jews tried to suppress the name of God so that the Christians couldn't call upon their God. And so they suppressed this and hid it amongst the rabbis. Now it is something that they don't talk about, and they won't say. But we have what Nehemiah Gordon has done is he has access to. He has managed to get access to huge amounts of rabbinic writings that have never before been looked at or translated into English. And obviously Nehemiah Gordon speaks Hebrew, so he can read the works and these books, and he's found the information within this. So I would definitely say to anybody who's listening to go and read the writings and go follow Nehemiah Gordon, who talks about this. And you can push back against Nehemiah, that's fine. Come on, and we'll push back against that. But that's the general consensus, or the the evidence is seeming to lead now that we have manuscripts that include the 3 vowel pointings for Jehovah. We don't have any that point to Yahweh. We know that claim that the vowel pointings for Adonai and Elohim are wrong because they don't use the same vowel pointings as Jehovah or Yahweh, for that matter. They are completely different vowel pointings. So there are different vowel pointings for Jehovah, different vowel pointings for Yahweh, different vowel pointings for Adonai, different pointings for Elohim. So the argumentation that Jehovah is a hybrid is just it doesn't hold factual truth because the vowel pointings are different. Now, there's an argumentation that I've seen arguments about Raymondus Martin coming up with this name in 1270. Now, that's actually incorrect itself because Raymondus Martin actually never published his writing. And I can't remember the name of that writing, but I've got it, and we can have a look at it. But he never published that writing. That was it was posted. It was published by a man nearly 400 years later. And what he did is he took his writings and he edited the writing that he did. Now, the writing that Raymondus Martin didn't include Jehovah. It was a different form of. So it was spelled IOH. So it was different. I'll have to look the exact spelling up, but it wasn't Jehovah. And actually, this guy in the 17th century actually changed it to Jehovah in the writings. So question a second. How are you spelling what you call God's name? So okay, to me, it doesn't really matter whether you use a Y sounding or a J sounding. I'm perfectly okay if you spell Yehovah with the Y thousand years ago, 3,000, 4,000. I wouldn't be arguing they were called Jews. I wouldn't be saying that it was Jerusalem or that the guy that led them into the promised land was Joshua. I wouldn't utilize this. But as an English speaker, a modern English speaker, the English language is an English word. That's just what it is. So Elohim we don't say Elohim in English. We say God. So that is, of course, who he was or what he is. Elohim is completely different than God. But we know what God is. It's the English equivalent of Elohim. The same way as Jehovah, if we use the J, we use that J sound in modern English. So I don't I don't have a problem with that. If you want to utilize the Y sound, Yehovah, perfectly okay with that as well. I don't see any issue. We know that it wouldn't be Jehovah in the original, but like I say, I don't see any problem with using the English word Jesus, because it is just a transliteration of it's a modern English rendering of the older English rendering of the Greek way, the Latin of the Greek. So yeah, I don't see any problem with any of that. Now, I've really spoken quite a bit. I haven't even really gone into great detail about the kind of evidence that we can present, that I can present and show. I mean, we can look at the actual vowel pointings of each of these. We can look at theophoric names that all have Yehoshaphat, Yeshua. Not ya. They begin with JE or YE, or however you want to spell it, but it's the sound rather than a ya sound. So even theophoric names have a that Yehovah pronunciation within them. So and we can look at why it is Yehovah but hallelujah. Okay, there are reasons why that why that changes, because of Greek, because of Hebrew grammar. Just it's all about the where the emphasis is, and it changes at the end of a word from where it is in the beginning of a word. So it changes. So it would be Yehovah but hallelujah. Now we also have quite a few, I think it's 48 times where the name Yah is used. And there are reasons why Yah is used in those particular times rather than yeah. So we can have a look at all of those in that. So I've really just kind of spouted quite a bit of information, and I'm going to let Gavin kind of push back now. Well done, Gavin, for not interrupting as I spoke. You now you can speak. I'll allow you.
Wow, you can't believe it, can you, LJ?
I am shocked. You did say that
you are completely shocked.
You did say, and I'm well done.
No, I've only got 2 questions for you. I'm not going to look. I don't want to push back per se. I'm deeply interested in listening to what you have to say. So I came on board because I want to hear that argumentation. So I'm more than happy to be patient and listen to what it is you have to say. No, I don't want to be involved to push back or anything like this. I mean, how can I push back if you just starting or get going? There's 2 things I wanted to ask you.
Okay,
but not as a pushback point of view. One, there's a comment that's been made where Judaizers make a big deal of God's name. Jesus or the apostles never call him anything but Father. It's good enough for me. Do you feel strongly that God's name is important, or do you feel that if we refer to God as Father, that should suffice? I mean, what would your response on that be?
I don't see any problem or issue with saying Father, Abba. I don't see any issue with those those names or titles for God more than anything. I don't see any issue if you wanted to say Hashem, if you wanted to say Adonai, if you want to. I don't see any issue. You don't have to say his name. And it's perfect, and it is absolutely correct that the New Testament doesn't go into the name of God. But what I do believe is that the Old Testament does go into the name of God, and it does say to proclaim his name to the Gentiles, and it does say that to speak God's name, to go in the authority of God's name, to proclaim it to others, to pray in that name. And it does. So there are many times when it talks about the name of God, and he does refer to it. So I don't. Yes, okay, fair enough. Call him Abba. I have no. I'm not saying that. I'm not in this. In this argumentation, it's not about do we have to say the name of God. It's purely what is it? Is it Jehovah? Is it Yahweh? Is it some other thing? I'm not in any way saying that we have to say the name of God. For me, it's important to know the name of God. I think that because I'm following the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. I like to study the Old Testament, and I see the name of God written in the Old Testament, and I see God talking about the proclamation of his name. And one of the verses that I say right at the end of my study that I did, and it's Isaiah 56:6, and it says, also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to the Lord, to Jehovah, to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever you want to be his servants, everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it and taketh hold of my covenant. I love that. I am a stranger, and I have joined myself to the Lord. And so and it says, and to love the name of the Lord, Yahweh. So how you want to understand that is that his authority, is that him, is it the pronunciation of his name? That's fine. I don't mind. It's not an argumentation. I'm really not trying to make an argumentation that we must say his name, that we must know his name, call him Abba. I think that God will perfectly respond to Abba, perfectly respond to Father. But I also think that the Old Testament does talk about the proclamation of God's name and knowing it and telling the Gentiles and coming in the authority. Jesus talks about the coming in the authority of his Father's name. You know, so I think that Jesus, while he said Abba, I think he knew the name of God. I don't see anything that would tell me that he didn't know the name of God. Now, it's recorded in Scripture that the name of God isn't there in the New Testament, but yeah, I just, so on that basis, I'm not going to make an argumentation that we must use it. I just think that we should know it if you want to know it. And I also think that I don't see that if you use the term Yahweh and it isn't Yahweh, or you use the name Jehovah and it isn't Jehovah, I don't see that God, if you are applying that name to the God of Israel, I don't think that God is going to hold that to your detriment because you didn't get his name right, because it got confused or it got hidden and you weren't aware of it. I don't think that anybody, I believe that the name Yahweh comes from Jupiter, but I don't believe that Christians calling upon Yahweh are calling upon Jupiter. I believe they are calling upon the God of Israel, the God of this world, the real God, the one true God. I believe that that's what they're doing. I just think that they've got the name wrong. But God is not. There's a psalm, I think it's Psalm 44, where God says, if people don't have confused my name and they call upon a different name, but they call upon me, I will hear them. So if you're calling upon Jupiter, or you're calling on Yahweh and you are referring to Jupiter, God's not going to hear you because you're talking to Jupiter. If you're referring to Yahweh and you're talking to the God of the Bible, the one true God, and you're using that name, I think God is 100% going to respond to that. There's no issue for me with that.
No, that's nice. So you're saying that, if you're gonna single out the true God by his identity and by his personal name, even though we don't know exactly what their pronunciation is, that appreciation or endeavor or love for God's name in calling him out and identifying him as the true God amongst false gods, God would recognize that and even recognize your endeavor to call him by name.
I think so. If you don't really have the ability to figure out what God's name is, because it's very difficult to figure that out from we're living in year 2025. We're not living 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, where that name would have been pronounced throughout Israel, throughout the Jewish people. We're now living in a time where we don't really have access to that kind of information, and all we have are the Hebrew manuscripts that talk about Yud Hey Vav Hey with no I mean, we do have now, we know of vowel pointings with Jehovah, but before that, before the last 8 years, we didn't. And if you're reading an English Bible and you're an English speaker and all you have access to is an English Bible, and you call upon him as the Lord, how I don't see any way that God would be able to or would want to hold that against you. So my argument, so it's certainly, I'm certainly not going to try and make an argumentation that you use the word Yahweh, you're hellbound. What it was that is an argumentation that some Hebrew Israelites would say, that if you are calling upon the wrong name, and they will tell you what the name is, because they will, and it's not Yahweh in most of the times, and it's not Jehovah. They've come up with their own kind of creation, and they will tell you that this is the name of God. And they will tell you in certain camps of Hebrew Israelitism, if you don't pronounce this name right, you're not speaking to God. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I think if you call upon the God of the Bible, right, and you refer to the God of the Bible by Abba, by Father, or any of these terms, as long as you're referring to God and you know who you're speaking to, I think there's no reason why God is going to dismiss that and not accept that.
No, I must tell you, I appreciate you having the view that you do, because I think it's very moderate. And the reason is because I know a lot of XJWs who will actually tell me that if I use the name Jehovah, that I'm talking to it. That's what's so interesting, is from your studies, you're saying that you feel that there's more of an argument to use Jehovah or Yehovah as opposed to Yahweh. But I actually know XJW witnesses who tell me that my spiritual progress will be impeded as long as I call on the name Jehovah, where they say that if you call on the name, if you pronounce that name Jehovah, you're actually calling on a demon god. Don't you think that's interesting? That's why I was so keen to hear what your argument was, and that's why I'm so open to it. Because from your perspective, you're saying that from your study, you feel more inclined to lean on a proper pronunciation or more accurate pronunciation of God's name as Jehovah or Jehovah. And yet I have Jehovah's Witnesses saying the exact opposite, because they've been caught up in this religion where there's such a strong emphasis on the name Jehovah, where they identify themselves as Jehovah's Witnesses. A lot of witnesses have left the religion and are now positing a strong argument that anyone who calls on God's name and pronounces it Jehovah is actually following a demon god. I mean, what a contrast, don't you think?
I think this is exactly the same as the anybody else that kind of that, like the Hebrew Israelites, who will argue anything against Catholicism. Everything is against. If the Catholics believe it, they believe the opposite. It's kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Just because you don't follow the Jehovah's Witnesses religion anymore, or the cult, or however you want to call it, the beliefs of the Jehovah's Witnesses, doesn't necessitate that they're wrong on everything. Many of the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that God is.
That's a beautiful point. I like that. Yeah.
Most Jehovah's Witnesses, as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any Trinitarian Jehovah's Witnesses. All Jehovah's Witnesses believe that God is one, that He is the Father. So, okay, now do you throw that out because Jehovah's Witnesses believe it?
Yes.
You're no longer a Jehovah's Witness. So, do you now say that so that part of it must be incorrect as well? Jehovah's Witnesses have everything wrong? Of course they don't. I don't believe that they do. I don't believe that Catholicism has everything wrong. I think there's lots of things that are correct within Catholicism. There's not that much, I must admit. I think that, but if you're talking about things that they believe, I do believe that they do believe certain things which I would agree with. Not everything. So I'm going to just quickly go through some of these questions. So what do I believe the name of God is, and how do you spell it? So I believe it to be Jehovah or Yehovah. Now so I would spell it Jehovah. Now you can replace the J at the front with a Y. I have no issue with that whatsoever. Yehovah, Jehovah. No issue with how you would, and that is an English spelling of it. I don't believe that is how the Hebrews would spell it, because they don't have Y's, they don't have J's, they don't have O's, they don't have V's. Those are English letters. So I don't think that we can really argue against spellings. I think it more should be pronunciations of the way that it should be pronounced. So I also, I don't know if I can find the so there's a guy in the Dan of NJ, or Don of NJ. I can't see if that's so the whole point in the Torah is that God is not referred to by name. It would be disrespectful. Now, if you read the Torah, His name is there 6,800 times. And proclamations of verse after verse after verse that tell you to proclaim the name of God. I don't see anywhere that that God is saying that my name is not known. I mean, let's just look at some of these. Deuteronomy 32:3, because I will publish the name of the Lord, Jehovah, Yahweh, ascribe ye greatness unto our God. Psalm 22:22, I will declare thy name unto my brethren. In the midst of the congregation will I praise thee. Psalm 96:2, sing unto the Lord, bless his name. I don't see anywhere where the name should not be referred to, and that it would be disrespectful. That's not Torah. That's Mishnah. That's Talmud. That's not Torah.
I'm with you on that, LJ.
Yeah, Torah is Torah says to proclaim the name. Not to hide it. There's no prohibition against saying the name of God. Now, there are verses that talk about not blaspheming the name of God, and Jews have used that as a way of like not proclaiming the name of God. That's rabbis. That's rabbinic tradition that talks about, you're not allowed to destroy a manuscript that has the name of God in it. And that's why they don't write the name of God, because you can't deface the name of God. And so you can't, if you write that in a manuscript, you might not destroy it, but somebody else might destroy it. That manuscript might get destroyed in some other way. So that would be defacing the name of God. And that wouldn't be something you can do. So they wouldn't record the name down in recordings, writings. So is not to deface the name of God, get it wrong. You spell the name of God wrong. That would be blasphemous into a Jew. But that's rabbinic teaching. That's not Torah teaching. The Torah does not say anything about, oh, you can't write my name, you can't proclaim my name. This is rabbinic teaching. So I certainly wouldn't argue for that point. Sister Becky says, yeah, and I'm going to get to this as well. There are many scriptures with his name as Yah, and I will explain why it is Yah there and not Yeah. So we'll go into that in a moment, but so that's something that kind of was one of the things that actually interested me, why it would be Yah and not Yeah. And so I decided to include that as part of my study. So we'll go into that in a moment. I'll get to that, Sister Becky, no problem. We'll do that. So Gavin, I think you had another point that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, just for clarification, because I know Clayt mentioned, he made a comment, and I wasn't saying that all Jehovah's Witnesses have a repugnance toward the name Jehovah. I was just saying that there are some who've left who have an argument, an opposite argument from your perspective in support of that pronunciation. And as Clayt is saying, the King James also 4 times puts that pronunciation forward as Jehovah. And that's why I think it's so refreshing for me to listen to your argument, because you actually arguing for that pronunciation. Whereas I know that there are some Jehovah's Witnesses, because of their experience, and maybe because they've been so disillusioned by it, they come away and they drop that name in its entirety. And they go so far as to argue that anyone who were to pronounce God's name as Jehovah, that it actually has some sort of demonic influence, that if you refer to God by that name, you're going to be hindered spiritually. But so just to clear that, but I want to ask you one more thing, because you mentioned on something that I didn't think you would actually pick up on, and that is Raymundus Martini.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, because if you were to go onto Watchtower Online Library and you were to type in Raymundus Martini, you'd actually have a number of articles that refer to him. So can I read you something from ChatGPT that says something about Raymundus Martini?
Yep. If you go to the Catholic website as well, many Catholic websites will say that that the name Jehovah was created by Raymundus Martini as well.
Oh wow!
So it's not just it's not just found in certain parts of the religion and stuff. It is commonplace. It's a commonplace argumentation against the name Jehovah. But like I say, Raymundus Martini never utilized the name Jehovah.
Oh, that's what I want to ask you. Can I read this statement? Can you tell me what you agree or disagree with this statement? Because I've never heard that before. So I'm not discounting it. I'm more than happy to listen to why you make that statement. But it says Raymundus Martini is indirectly connected to Jehovah's Witness because he was one of the first known Christian writers to use the Latinized form Jehovah for God's name. In his 13th century work, Dagger of Faith, he attempted to refute Jewish beliefs using Jewish sources like the Talmud. In this work, he transliterated the Hebrew Tetragrammaton as Jehovah, as in Iehova in Latin. Jehovah's Witnesses emphasize the use of Jehovah as God's personal name, arguing that it should be restored in Bible translations. Although Martini was a Catholic theologian with no connection to Jehovah's Witnesses, who were found in the 19th century, his use of Jehovah contributed to its later adoption in various biblical Bible translations, including the King James Version and the New World Translation, which is used by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in that statement that you would disagree with?
Well, yeah, because right, it's understood that Raimundus Martini utilized this name Jehovah when he actually didn't. Now, this is the point that I would like to push back on. So Raimundus Martini never published that work. Okay.
Oh, you mean Pugio Vitae, Dagger of Faith?
Yeah, he didn't. He never published that. That was never published by him. Okay, the book was found by a 17th century writer called Joseph Voisin. Okay, now it was Joseph Voisin who published the work of Raimundus Martini, and it is the work published by Voisin that utilizes Jehovah. The original writing by Martini, which we have, okay, this work, it actually utilized the spelling was I believe IOH OUAH, right? It wasn't Jehovah. It wasn't with a yeah. It was more Iho. It's a strange strange spelling, but it isn't. It was never that in the So it was he used Y. Okay, but Carlo Martini. I keep saying Carlo Martini. Raimundus Martini didn't write Jehovah. That was Joseph Voisin in his rewriting, basically, of Martini's work, and he spelt it Jehova without the H at the end. So I don't know if you can ask ChatGPT that particular piece of information.
Yeah, I suppose if I how do I spell this? How do I spell?
So you want to ask? So first of all, ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Who did? His name is.
Let me spell that to me.
So it's Joseph. VOISIN. Just say, did Joseph Voisin?
Sorry,
publish
VOI
SIN.
Yeah.
SIN.
Yeah.
Voisin. Yeah. Ask him. Ask ChatGPT. I say him. Ask ChatGPT if Joseph Voisin published the work of Raimundus Martini, and ask it that particular work as well. So put that particular work in, and you'll find that was done in the 17th century.
Okay, hold on. This is interesting.
That was published. So now we're doing ChatGPT scholarship.
So you want the answer?
Fire away.
Very interesting. Listen, this is why what you said for me was I've never ever heard it before, because from a JW perspective, there's a direct connection and even a denial of the adoption of the name Jehovah attributed to Raimundus Martini.
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I've heard from friends of mine have a strong argument that Remindis Martini was a spiritualist.
Mm.
Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard that he was a spiritualist, but
Yeah,
he was a Spanish Catholic monk. We
yeah.
know that.
Well. The interesting thing about what he writes is between him and his wife, they would invoke spirits. They kind of felt that they got truths from the spirit world. And so the conclusion that they came to was what the spirit world revealed to them. And then they came up with the name Jehovah. So for, for you to mention that actually it's not down to the 13th, but the 17th century, I thought that was fascinating. So let me
Mm.
tell you what ChatGPT says. It says, yes, Joseph Voisin, a 17th century French theologian, published the work of Raymondus Martini. He edited and republished Piaggio Fidei in 1651 in Paris. This edition helped preserve and circulate Martini's arguments against Judaism, making his work more widely available to scholars and theologians of that time. Voisin's version was particularly significant because it provided access to Martini's extensive use of Jewish sources, which has been largely forgotten. So that's fascinating because in the first part I wrote, when you mentioned that his emphasis, Ramundus Martini, was in on Jehovah, not Jehovah,
Mm-hmm.
it just shows you how things have been kind of conflated, and kind of where some things have been lost in translation. That's why I was so keen to hear what you had to say and what to present, because there are a number of conclusions that some of my friends have drawn that's not 100% accurate, or
Mm.
that at least there's a question mark against it. It's just not that clear cut that if
Yeah.
you were to use the name Jehovah, you are praying to a demon god, because you're saying the opposite. You're saying you feel less comfortable with the pronunciation of God's name as Yahweh. But what I do appreciate, in listening to what you have to say, um, LJ, is at least your recognition, appreciation for God's name, that you do hold it with high esteem, and I think that's important.
Mm. So yeah, so as you see, it was edited by
Yes, I
Wilson.
admit you actually were correct.
Yeah,
Well done. That's
yeah.
lovely.
So Raimundos didn't actually write Yehovah. That was edited by Voisin, and he changed the YOH to JEH. Um, so of Martini's writing. Now, if you go, you'd have to go and have a look at the actual evidence for that and show it. But um, so that, like I say, Martini never published that work. It was never published by him. Uh, it was published by Voisin, who changed the spelling
Can I read you something?
of course, yeah, fire away.
So I said, did Joseph Voisin change the pronunciation of God's name? Yes. Joseph Voisin's 1651 edition of Pugio Fidei made a notable change in the way God's name was presented. While Remundus Martini originally used Eova, a Latinized form of the Tetragrammaton YHW8, Voisin altered the spelling to Jehovah.
Hmm.
This change influenced later uses of the name Jehovah in Christian writings and Bible translations. This modification played a role in solidifying Jehovah as the common Latin and later English rendering of God's name, which was eventually embraced by groups like Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. Now,
Very
what
interesting.
yeah, what we don't know is how Martini came up with the yaw sound.
Mm,
Now it's certainly not a yeah sound and it's not a yeah sound, but he
mm,
came up with kind of a yaw sound.
mm,
Now we don't know how he came up with that. There's no evidence to
mm,
suggest that he came up with
mm,
that through
mm,
um, any manuscript evidence or
mm,
it was passed to him. We don't know how he came up with that. What we do know is that he pronounced it, that it kind of has a yaw sound rather than either a yeah or a ya sound. But that was his rendering of it. That was how he presented it. But to say that he came up with Yehovah is just factually incorrect.
Well, that for me is fascinating. I'm going to send someone. People who I know are they're very they're very strong feelings about the name of God. But I'd at least like to forward this and say, look, at least listen to this, consider it. Maybe there are some things that we're not completely, totally, fully aware of.
I think that the thing is that what we do is that we assume that something that we've read and been passed on to us is factually accurate. We just assume that it is, without going.
I must be honest. I thought it was a done deal, but from the stuff that you've mentioned, it's quite surprising. I think I completely missed it, LJ.
Yeah, I that's one thing that I've kind of learned now is that I don't just necessarily take anything that anybody says as fact. I have to go.
Well done. No, well done. You undug some valuable stuff. All respect to you for doing that.
Yeah, and like I say, we have Jewish writings, rabbinic writings that predate 1270, and we have manuscript evidence that predates 1270 that have the pronunciation of Yehovah. So I think, and I'm talking about thousands of manuscripts that have the vowel pointing Yehovah. So to say that this Yehovah pronunciation was created by some Catholic monk in 1270 or Galantius in 1500s is just, it really is just, it's just not factually correct. Now, again, whether this affects anyone, whether it changes, somebody, okay, I can use the word Yehovah, or I still don't care, I'm going to use Yahweh, that's irrelevant. Like I say, as long as you're calling on God and you feel like this is okay for you, I'm not making the argumentation that you have to say Yehovah. I'm just pointing out the facts and the evidence. And if you want to say that, it is Yahweh because of this, because it was created by Raimundus Martini, the Yehovah was created by him, so it must be Yahweh. Well, use Yahweh, but let's be accurate with the reasoning why you want to use that. Don't use false information to obviously to come up with your thing. If you want to use Yahweh, you fire away, you carry on, but then don't argue against Jehovah utilizing incorrect information. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you 100%. That's absolutely balanced.
Raimundus Martini did not create Jehovah, nor did Galantius create Jehovah. It existed long before that, and it isn't by inserting the vowel pointings of Adonai into the Tetragrammaton and creating a hybrid name. That's just factually incorrect. The vowel.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned it as well, because I was also under the mistaken view that that's how you come to the name Jehovah. So
yeah, so
that's an amazing point.
Let me just bring up. Gesenius in the 1700s. Let me find. He said that Gesenius. He said the vowel pointings were something completely different than. My computer's decided to go on a go slow. So. Where is it?
Well,
Where is it?
can I ask you while you're looking?
Yes.
What is your view of what the name Jehovah or Jehovah transliterates into? Do you feel more strongly that it's I am that I am, or that I
Yeah.
will cause, or that I will cause to be?
So the theological kind of argumentation of why Yahweh is because of obviously it's I calls to be, I create. The creator Yahweh is, I think that it is Haya Asher, that understanding of Exodus 3:14. I think that's the explanation of God's name that he then proclaims in Exodus 3:15. So the I am of 3:14 that you see in many kind of understandings is is an explanation. Is I will be, or I exist. That's how I understand it. It's a more the Yah. Sorry, the Yehovah is a kind of is the three abbreviated words of Aya, basically, and it is I am, or I was, I am, and I will be. That is those are the three kind of terminology within Yehovah. It is I was, I am, and we see this in Revelation. This proclamation of the understanding of God's name. I think that when Moses asks, who shall I tell them has sent me? I think God says who he is, and then he tells him his name. He says who he is. There's the explanation of who is sending you, and then he says that's verse 14, and then he proclaims his name, which is the understanding of who he is, in verse 15. So the Yud He Vav He, which is in verse 15, is the name, and in 14 it's the explanation of the name. So I don't think that it's Yahweh as in the creator. I believe that it is Yehovah as in I am, I will be, I exist. All of these types of understandings, of which however really way you want to explain it in English. But it is a I'm a past, present, and future.
No, I actually like that, because in a way, it's almost a reassurance that God can be whatever he wants to be to fulfill his purposes,
So I'm still trying to find my I'm going to struggle with this because my computer's just stopped working.
So far so good. I don't have any pushback. Are you shocked, LJ?
I am a little bit.
No, why should they be? I kind of feel if you're presenting something that is, a logical argument, that it's accurate, that it's, it resembles, evidence that you can put forward for consideration, I'm good to go.
Yeah. Why can I not find this piece of information on my site?
I got ChatGPT here. Do you want me to type in something?
No, it's just I've just recorded on my. Okay, so Gesenius said that the vowel pointing for
How do you spell that? I want to type it in just on the side.
Gesenius is GESENIUS. So he was a German scholar.
So what can I type into ChatGPT just to see if I can resemble or come closer?
You could just
say, and I'm not doing this to undermine you. It's just
no. So you could just say, to start off with, who was Gesenius?
Okay.
You can just. So is you might want to say William Gesenius.
Oh no, it's come up with it. It says a German
Yeah.
biblical scholar,
Wilhelm
linguistic, and
Gesenius.
theologian.
Mm.
And can I ask a specific question that relates to what you say?
I suppose you could say his argumentation for the pronunciation or what God's name is.
Okay, hold on.
And then you can look at modern Hebrew lexicons that base their work on Gesenius's work.
So immediately it says that his reasoning was based on linguistic, historical, and grammatical evidence, where he argued that God's name was Yahweh.
Yeah. So he argued that it was Yahweh, and
Mm.
in his lexicon, his Greek Chaldee lexicon, he
Mm.
makes this statement.
Mm.
Let me find it.
Because they're going on to talk about the Masoretic vowel system and Jehovah
Yeah,
misunderstanding.
yeah. So he says, to give my opinion, this is Gesenius, I suppose this word to be one of the most remote antiquity, perhaps of the same origin as Jovis or Jupiter, and transferred from the Egyptians to the Hebrews. That's what he believed happened. And because he believed that the God of Israel was just an incorporated God by the he existed before with the Egyptians, with the Greeks and the Roman, but then was incorporated by the Jews. Now you can find this on. You don't even have to search for this. You can just go onto you can go onto Wikipedia, right? And this is what modern scholarship will tell you, that that the Israelite God is because modern scholarship doesn't believe in the one true God of Israel. So this is just Wikipedia. You can find this on the name Yahweh.
Yeah,
It
but
says
that's a massive point you're making there in terms of the motivation, where you say that they might not have acknowledged that actually God, the only true God, has associated himself with the name, whereas this guy might come from a perspective or viewpoint that it's adopted,
yeah, and
which is massive.
that is definitely. I'm just going to post a link again because I think that there hasn't been nobody's actually seen a link, just in case. So this is what Wikipedia has to say. Yahweh was an ancient Levantine deity worshipped in Israel and Judah. Though no consensus exists regarding the deity's origins, scholars generally hold that the deity is associated with Seir, Odom, Param, and Teman, and later with Canaan. The deity's worship reaches back to at least the early Iron Age and likely to the late Bronze Age, if not somewhat earlier. Listen to what modern scholarship says. It doesn't have anything to do with Israel. Why would anybody follow modern scholarship that believes that the God of Israel, regardless of what his name is the one true God that created the universe? Because modern scholarship doesn't hold to that. Modern scholarship is secular modern scholarship. It doesn't believe in the Bible. It doesn't believe that God of the Bible is the God of the creator of this universe. Don't follow modern scholarship because it will lead you astray.
I'm with you absolutely. Even though it's respected, as you say, it could lead you to stray. In the same way that if you were to base an argument based on the church fathers, there's a potential you could be led astray. Why not base your comments on the commentaries of those who write the last 27 books of the Bible?
I just the more I follow or look at modern scholarship, the less I am interested in it.
Yes.
People talk and say to me, "Oh, you should go and get your scholarship, and you should go."
Please don't! It'll ruin you for life. This whole seminary thing. It's.
I just see the information that is
Mm,
spouted at these at the modern seminary, and
mm,
I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm not interested in it. I just see
mm,
what modern scholarship does. It just
mm,
it is there to destroy, because modern scholarship. You have to remember, modern scholarship is secular. It is not
yes.
taking into account, and you cannot take into account that God is real within that secular
Mm,
scholarship. You
yes.
cannot say that
Mm,
if you want to pass secular scholarship, you cannot
mm,
say that the Bible was written prior to 70 AD. You can't. Why? Because
mm,
obviously Jesus cannot predict the fall of the temple, because he is
yeah.
not God's son, right?
Mm,
He is not the Messiah. So he cannot predict that. Modern
mm,
scholarship will not allow you to say that Jesus Christ predicted the fall of the temple. So
mm,
modern scholarship says that the Bible was written after the fall of the temple, and later writers put that back onto the words, the lips of Jesus.
mm,
You can't get away with saying that Jesus is the Messiah, that he really is the Messiah, that he really
mm,
did rise from the dead, that he really did heal people. These are
mm,
just things that you cannot actually state if you want to have any credibility in modern scholarship,
yes.
because modern scholarship won't allow for that to be true, in the
Yes.
same way as the God of Israel isn't true. So
Yes.
it must be that the God of Israel is a later the Israelites, the
Mm,
people of the book, incorporated the
mm,
God of Canaan when they
yes.
moved into the land.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's what modern scholarship believes, that the Yahweh,
Yes.
Jehovah, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call him, was
Yes.
incorporated and accepted by the Hebrews, by the Israelites, when they moved into that land. Not
Mm,
that that is their God prior to that, and that it is the God that existed and created the universe, because of
yes.
course modern scholarship holds to the fact that evolution created this universe. The
Yes.
the Big Bang, or however you want to, I don't think that many hold to the Big Bang theory anymore, but um,
Mm.
you know, you know what I'm meaning by when I say that. It wasn't God.
Well, thank God you're not a Bart Ehrman.
No, exactly. And so Bart Ehrman will argue that the Bible was written after 70 AD,
Oh,
or the
absolutely.
New
That's what I'm
Testament,
saying.
because
Thank God people
yeah,
like you and me, or many other people who have faith are not, regarded and revered in that whole echelon of, you know, people are looked up to as modern scholars, because it's not necessarily something that's going to lead to your faith. It'll
yeah,
probably more likely to destroy your faith. And not that faith's a fickle thing, because faith, truly can be based on some very strong evidence. Do you know what I mean?
so let's I just want to try and let me just find this information about Yah, why Yah was used. It's used 48 times. It's the short form of God. But this is obviously argued that the short form of God is used, and it becomes, so is Yahweh, and that just gets shortened to Yah
Mm,
rather than Jehovah, and that's the short version, is the end of the name. The short is we know this. We know that the end that it is the ending, not the beginning of the name. Right? When it's shortened, it's utilizing the Yah of Yehovah rather than Yah of Yahweh. And we know that by the vowel pointing within how the Masoretes utilized the vowel pointing for Yah. Um, so while it sounds the same in English, right? Yah, it's got this a sound. In Hebrew, there are different vowels that they are said the same way, kind of an a sound or an s sound or an r sound, e sound. They don't have I E O U, a e I O U. They don't have the 5 vowels. They have numerous vowels, right? And so the vowel pointing in Yahweh is different than the vowel pointing in Yah. So it's a patak in Yahweh. And this is what Gesenius said, that the vowel pointing for Yahweh. So the vowel point there is called a patak. But in the vowel pointing of Yah, when it's shortened, it isn't. It has a kamatz. All right. So in Hebrew, you can see the difference. And the kamatz is the vowel pointing at the end of Yehovah. That vowel pointing, kamatz, comes at the end. When it's at the beginning of Yahweh, it's a totally different vowel pointing. It's called a patach. So we know this, that the shortened version of Yah is the ending of Yehovah rather than the beginning of Yahweh, based on the vowel pointing. So while in English it sounds the same, in Hebrew you cannot make that mistake, because the vowel pointing won't allow you to make that mistake. So that's
wow,
how
that's interesting. So you're saying that at face value, most people would associate the Yah as a shortening of Yah, Yahovah, but the beginning of the pronunciation. Whereas you're saying actually the Yah, it doesn't derive from the beginning of how you would pronounce God's name, but from the ending, the where or the wah.
From the Jehovah. That's the how the shortened form Yah comes from. It comes from the ending of Yehovah.
So if we look, I pulled up here where it speaks about Genesius, right? Analyzing the vowel pointing of God's name.
Mm-hmm.
So Yahweh says are the consonants for YHWH, the vowels from Adonai are AOA, and then it says when combined incorrectly, this produced Yehovah, which later became Jehovah in Latinized form.
Well, it's not about incorrect; it's about correct. And
Okay.
so the Gesenius says that the vowel pointing. Let me bring up. I'm going to do this. Let me just bring up the page. I want to bring up the vowel point. I want to show people the vowel pointings to show that. No, I'm hoping that I can do this.
So most theophoric names, could one assume that what is, the prefix of most theophoric names is the Yah sound, Y-A-H.
Well, the theophoric names are
As in Y-E-H.
as in Y-E-H.
Mm.
They're not they're not Y-A-H.
So
They're
if
sound.
so if with the vowel points that it should be Y-E-H-O-W-A-H. Are you saying that the Yah, Y-A-H is not derived from the beginning of God's name in terms of how you pronounce it, but rather the end part, not
Well,
the
the
beginning part?
Y-A-H. If you're utilizing just the shortened version of God's name Yah, which is used 48 times, that
Yes.
comes from the ending of Jehovah, Yahovah.
Okay.
Now I'm going to
So
show
you mean when you say the end, you mean the VAH part of it?
It was Jehovah sound, Can you see this?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Let me see. That's about as big as I'm going to be able to get it to show.
Yeah.
So
That looks
the vowel pointings. Yeah. So the vowel pointings of in Hebrew. All right. If you have a look here, so these are three vowels. So this kamatz under the Hebrew word here, letter.
Mm-hmm.
This vowel pointing, it almost looks like a T,
Mm-hmm.
a small T underneath it. I don't know if you can see this underneath here.
Yeah, I can see
All right,
that.
it's kind of like a T. That's called a kamatz. All right. Now the
Okay.
patak, if you have a look there, the patak vowel, which also says but it's just a straight line. It doesn't have this little dot underneath it.
Mm.
Can you see that? Is that
Mm-hmm.
visible on the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
You can see, and it's quite small, isn't it? I don't know if I can. Let me.
Can you zoom in a bit more to show
Yeah.
the difference between the kamatz and the patak?
Okay. Let me see if that does that work.
Because
Can
it's
you?
just the vowel pointings look so similar.
Yeah. Can you see this? Can you see this one? This under here looks more like a T. This one,
Yes.
the kamatz, it has
Yes.
like a straight line and then a little dot underneath the straight line. That's a kamatz.
Oh, okay. Yes, it looks like a little T. Yes, that's kamatz.
Yeah. Whereas the patak
And the patak looks like a hyphen.
just has this straight line.
Straight line, yeah.
Okay, so that's the difference. They both have an ah sound.
Mm.
They are both pronounced ah,
Mm.
but there is a difference in the way that it is recorded in Hebrew.
Mm.
So if you were looking at that, you would still pronounce it ah, but you would know that if you were a Hebrew speaker, you would know that vowel pointing there is called a kamatz, and that vowel pointing is called a patak.
Okay.
And there is a third one, right, that is also pronounced ah, but in Hebrew you would still see the difference. This is a chataf patach.
Okay.
Okay, and this is two little dots with a line.
Mm.
So these are differences
Mm.
in the vowel pointings.
Mm.
Right
So
now,
just because I'm a bit slow, how would you describe what a vowel pointing is?
so the vowel pointing
I mean,
is
in case someone doesn't know, because we don't always go to this. I get a gist of what a vowel pointing is, but if you could just
yeah.
expound on it a bit.
The Masoretes came up with the Masoretes came up with the vowel pointing in order to write this down. So obviously the original manuscripts, the original writings of the Hebrew Bible, they were all written in just consonants, and you can still see manuscripts today which we have in existence that only have the consonants on. All right, but that is, unless you read Hebrew, unless you know the wordings and you know the context, you're never going to be able to understand.
Yes.
Read that properly. You have to know Hebrew in order to, if you've got an English word and you don't put vowels in, and you see the consonants CT. How do you read that? Is that cat, cot?
Sure.
How is that pronounced? You'd have to look at the context. If it says the baby was sleeping in the CT, well, obviously we know that isn't cat.
Sure.
It's a very strange place for a baby to sleep.
Yes.
Right. But if you see the CT was eating the food, you wouldn't assume that was a cot.
Sure.
You would know that was a cat.
Yeah.
So that's what the Hebrews know. They knew this. They would be able to read their Bible and know what what words were what.
Mm-hmm.
But the Masoretes came up with a vowel pointing system that allowed you to be able to read the vowels, read the words with the vowel pointing.
Okay.
And so they came up with, right, we're going to create a system of dots and dashes
Yes.
that would allow you to read, when you read the Hebrew, you're going to be able to read it without having to worry about knowing the context. You can just read it. You'll be able to read the vowels. We'll put the vowels in. Some people think that the Masoretes came up with the vowels, but that's an impossibility. You know, language has vowels. You know, they didn't create the vowels. The ancient Hebrews weren't speaking in consonants only. They were speaking in vowels. They just didn't record them down. They didn't write them.
Sure.
So the Masoretes came up with a system that allowed you to write down or read the Hebrew. Now there is slight differences in, and I'm not going to be able to tell you the differences. A Hebrew speaker will be able to do that. I can't do that. There are slight differences in the way that a patak is pronounced and a kamatz is pronounced. All right. I speak Czech, and there are different vowel pointings that will allow you to know whether a vowel is to be pronounced elongated, shortened, quick. You know, whether it should be emphasized or not emphasized. That's what this vowel system does. So although they have the ah sound, all three of those vowels have the ah sound. The kamatz, the patak, and the hataf patak all have an ah sound. But, and I don't know I can't tell you I don't speak Hebrew, so I don't know. But one of the, you know, it's going to be to the fact of whether you emphasize that particular ah sound, or whether it's a long ah sound or a short ah sound, you know. And that's the way that you would read that. So you would know if it was cat or cat. Yeah. Gavin has gone. So you would understand that if you read this, the kamatz, the patak, the hataf patak, you would understand whether it should be pronounced a certain way. Now, when it comes to Yahweh, it uses for the ah sound. When we come to the ah sound of Yahweh, it uses the hataf patak sound. So we know that however you pronounce hataf patak, the ah sound is at the beginning of Yahweh. Right? Let's say I'm just going to do this for point of emphasis, and I'm not trying to make this is the correct way, but let's put it this way. So I would say that the hataf patak would be an elongated ah sound, so it would be Yahweh. Right? When it comes to Yehovah, right, it uses the kamatz, so maybe that was Yehovah. It's a very shortened way of saying it. Now, when we come to the word Yah, and only Yah, guess which one it uses? Does it use the kataf patak of Yahweh, or does it use the kamatz of Yehovah? Well, it uses the kamatz of Yehovah. So we know that the shortened version of God's name, Yah, is using the end part of Yehovah, not the beginning part of Yahweh, because it's the vowel pointing is different. It doesn't utilize Yahweh's vowel pointing. It uses Jehovah's vowel pointing. So that's how we know the difference. In English, it sounds the same. Yah, Yah, Yah. But in Hebrew, you won't make that mistake. Right? Because of the vowel pointing. When you're reading it, you will know which vowel is being utilized.
So what you say is that the shortened version that appears 43 times as Yah is Based on the vowel points, it's not from Yahweh, it's from Jehovah.
from Jehovah.
Wow, that is very, very interesting.
All right, so that's how we know that when we
Mm.
see Yahweh, when we see Yah, the shortened version, we know
Mm.
there's
Oh,
a-
wow. So, yeah. So the vowel points show that it's actually not from Yahweh.
yeah,
It's from Jehovah or Jehovah,
yeah.
which which
So
which which gives you a more accurate rendering of how that name would be or could be pronounced.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So we know,
very,
so we
very
know that
interesting.
we know that Yahweh is not connected to Yah.
Wow, because naturally you might immediately think that, right?
Of course,
But
and I
based on the
understand that. I
vowel
yeah,
pointings, the answer is
yeah.
no.
I understand that. I fully understand because we're English speakers and we're not looking at the vowel pointings and we're not.
Very, very, very interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're looking at the sound that it's pronounced that
Mm,
it's making, but we don't speak. We're not Hebrew speakers. We're not looking at the vowel
mm.
pointings. But when you look at the vowel pointings, you will see that those vowel pointings do not point to Yahweh.
Wow, you little nerd. Very interesting.
Yeah. So
Goodness
that,
me.
that's why I would say that the Yah is the which is utilized so many times in the Bible. God's name, not the beginning of God's name.
Mm, very, very interesting.
Yeah. So the vowel point, Pure Blood says, when did the vowel pointing start? So that starts with the Masoretes in the Masoretic text, around about. Well, you could argue that it goes back to the 6th century, but I would probably go more like 7th century, really 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th century, that kind of time, when we see a lot of manuscripts arrive in the Hebrew with these vowel pointings kind of around this kind of time. So um, yeah, I would, but that doesn't mean that the vowels were created at that time. It just means the vowel pointings were done at that time in order to make it easier to read Hebrew. Now, when we look at Greek, ancient Greek, I mean, it used to be written, and it's no longer written that way because it's very difficult to read ancient Greek because one word um, there's no grammar within ancient Greek. One word literally continues on from another. When you look at a Greek manuscript from ancient Greek, it's very, very difficult to know when one word ends and one word begins. You have to speak that language and really to be able to understand it where it ends. And now I don't know if you ever listen to somebody speak a language that you don't understand. It's very difficult to know when somebody is speaking a foreign language when their words finish. When when one word finishes and the next one arrives. So that's how it was with ancient Greek. Ancient Greek changed and became modern Greek, and then you have the splitting up of words. The same with ancient Hebrew, wasn't written in with vowel pointings, but then became that way. The vowel pointings were later added to make things easier. Grammar, language expands, language changes, language evolves into modern ways of being able to speak. Greeks don't write in one continuous long line now, all words that joining together. That's not how Greeks write. We now have the letter J in English, which we didn't used to have, but we do now because modern English has changed and has adapted that letter within the language. Ancient, uh, I would say, because it's around the King James time, 1611. This is the beginning of modern English. Is that old English? People sometimes say that King James Bible is old English. No, 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 no. This is the beginning of modern English. Go and read Beowulf. That's old English. You'll never read that. You won't have a clue what's going on. you have literally no clue. Modern English started kind of around about the 15th century, and then was kind of formalized in around the 17th century, kind of formalized into modern, even to spellings. There was no real V's being used. They used the U letter, I's instead of J's, or even I's instead of Y's. Sometimes for that, especially at the beginning of a name, it would be I instead of Y, even though it had the same sounding. But that's modern. That is the way that language evolves from. It changes over time. There are many things today that people will say that had very different meanings back to, well, even 50, 60 years ago. I mean, just take the word gay for example. There's a film called The Gay Parisian. Now, if you take a modern understanding of the word gay and you read that back into the way that was meant back when that, I think it was 1930s film, 40s film, 30s, I think. You're going to get a very different understanding of what actually was meant back in that film. Is the gay that back then meant happy? It didn't mean the way that it does today. And language evolves. That's how we. So although the writing of the vowel pointings was written back with the Masoretes, the soundings didn't. They were already in existence. It was just obviously the writing down. It changed. That now, okay, we're going to write vowels. We'll put vowels into it, and that's just a modern way of doing writing Hebrew. It changed. The writing system changed. Writing systems used to be pictorial. Now they're lettoral. So it changes. Language evolves, and who knows what kind of way we'll be writing and speaking in 1,000 years' time. Who knows if we're still here? Who knows the way that people don't even write anymore. They really, it's all computerized. So it's not even, we don't even have writings. Most people are now writing letters by email and stuff. So it's all now. And then now what we're going back, we're actually regressing, I would say, back to pictorials. If you go to, a lot of modern young teenagers and adults are now using emojis to kind of communicate. They're leaving the writing system and going back to pictorials. They don't really say, I'm happy. People will ask, how are you? And they'll send a smiley face or a sad face, or, it's going back that way. So who knows, back, in 1,000 years' time, we might be back to pictures in the same way as the hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt. And that's where we're kind of heading. So, yeah, I've probably just gone on a little bit there, but I just wanted to kind of explain that.
No, that was wonderful. I'm glad you did that. It was fantastic.
Yeah. But yeah, so really, I mean, I don't know if anybody else, I will post again invite, so if anybody wants to come up and discuss with me anything that I've said, anything that they think, oh, I think you're wrong, I have no problem. You people know me. I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. I'm just I'm presenting information. That's all I want to do. I just want to present the information and then leave it up to you, leave it up to others to kind of make up their own mind. You want to say Yahweh, feel free. I have no problem with people saying Yahweh. I'm just presenting the information that I've studied, the information that I've found, and that's all I wanted. That's all I want to do. So feel free if somebody would like to come up and they would like to discuss the information. They think that what I presented is wrong. My dog is barking away.
Well, can I say just on my part, and then I'll bail out, sort of just take a back step. But I thought what you presented was fantastic. It was very informative. I can't fault you for any inaccuracy. It was, look, I mean, I refer to ChatGPT, but not that that should be like this, the arbitrator of what you were saying is true or false. But it concurred with a lot of what you were saying. I learned a lot, from the vowel points, from the pronunciation. Listen, I know a lot to a degree. I thought I did about Ramundus Martini. You put forward a lot of arguments there that actually what's more significant in the 13th to the 7th century. That was great, and but I think most of all what I liked about your presentation is you weren't dogmatic, you're not insistent, you've just given people, um, accurate information, but didn't in no way, posit the argument that we should now no longer be calling God Yahweh or Jehovah because it's very personally based, but it's up to each person's decision to make that choice. And it also shows that you have a high regard for God's name. And for me, I think that's a Christian thing. I really do. And I don't think it's just a Christian thing. I think it's a Christian view based on a very deep, long-standing creed, which is Jewish,
Yeah.
and how God's name is important to him. I don't think it should be any less importance to us. So if you felt strongly to be able to put that information in terms of how we pronounce God, for myself personally, I think it was absolutely fantastic what you put forward there. There's a lot for me to take away and think about. And I'm really, really glad you did this, LJ. It was amazing.
As I say, this is the way that I'm going to pronounce God's name. This is what I'm going to call him, Jehovah, until I see evidence that counteracts what I've studied, what I've come to the conclusion. Now that I don't believe that I'm going to find that information, but that doesn't mean that it isn't possible. I will call him Jehovah. I was to the point, like I say, I utilized Yahweh. I used both, but I would say that I used Yahweh more than Jehovah. I used to call him.
Me too. I've gone away from that name. I've loved that name, but
Yeah.
I had some doubt, and I thought to myself, look, I got to move more to what I consider to be more accurate. But to hear you put forward that argument, it's given me confirmation, a little bit more affirmation. It's reassured me a bit more, and that by no means means that I'm going to now talk to God any less by referring to him as Father, because that's a whole brand new, beautiful kind of next stage of my development in speaking to God is referring to him as Father, because that's not a JW thing. But now at least now I have a nice blend. If I want to refer to God by his name Jehovah and feel comfortable with it, I can. But if I want to call him in a more intimate way my Father, I can.
Of course.
I'm glad. I've enjoyed it. It's nice. It's given me a little bit more confidence, a bit more affirmation. It's not that I'm saying I'm insecure that me conversing with God is impeded in any way, but this has been a nice contribution.
Like I said, I don't think that if somebody utilizes Yahweh that they're not being heard, that God is turning them away and saying, I'm not going to listen to that. And I'm not telling anybody to change their mind. I'm not telling anybody to use Jehovah instead of Yahweh. You want to use you haven't been convinced by what I've presented, then that's fine. I can only present the information. If you think that you've got counter information, you've got counter evidence that actually shows Yahweh instead of Jehovah and that Jehovah is wrong, that's okay. I will look at that information. I don't have I don't have a dog in the fight of most things. I want to know. I just want to know the truth. I want to know what is, and that is why I do my studies, and they are personal studies. They are always personal studies. They convince me. They don't need to convince you. If you are convinced by them, then fine. If you're not, then fine. They convince me. That's why I do them, and then I just present the information that I study, that I find. Feel free to call God whatever you feel comfortable and whatever you want to call him. I have just presented the information why I believe that the name is Jehovah and why I will call him Jehovah, and that is that's all that I intend to do with my studies for other people, is present the information. I will. My studies are always for me, so that I know the truth. I know that I'm solid in my own beliefs because I want to know. I will share those views. If you are not convinced by my beliefs, don't be convinced by them. Carry on with Yahweh. Carry on with Father. That is perfectly acceptable. Whatever you feel comfortable in for yourself, what you want to call him, fine, no problem. I will do what I believe is correct through the studies that I've done. And if you think that I am wrong, I am not going to say that your argumentation is false until I've heard the argumentation and seen what it is. All right, and then looked at that evidence. If you have evidence, let's say, let's say that somebody came along and they presented me the information that we have found a manuscript from 200 AD, and it explicitly says Yahweh in the Hebrew text. Am I going to ignore that? Of course I wouldn't. I would look at the information. Where does it come from? How did it get there? Why is it there? Does it contradict other writings? I'm going to look at it and examine the information, examine the evidence. I'm not just going to take something and throw it away because, it doesn't agree with what I already believe. I'm going to look at that information. I'm going to study that information. That's how I've come to the study where I am at the moment. It was pointed out to me that the name Jehovah came from Raymondus Martini. Now, okay, fine. Is that true? If that was true, if he made that up, then it would make me say, okay, maybe it isn't Jehovah. If he was the first person that made that up, but the information it doesn't align because it doesn't. There's no backup of information, of study, of the facts don't back that up. So if somebody wants to come with more facts, fine, no problem. I'll have a look at them. That's all. And so, and if people don't want to agree with my interpretation, my understanding, my study, that's fine as well. But that's all I can do. I can only present. Have we had more pros?
LJ, I'm going to say goodbye, but I want to tell you I'm deeply disappointed with the fact that I couldn't push back, that I couldn't, prove that you're a numpty or that you don't know what you're talking about. But personally, it was a marvelous session. So thanks for having me on board.
No problem.
And
I'm actually going to be closing down, to be honest. And once you jump off, I've been going for 2 hours. I didn't really want to do too long.
No, it's been great. It's done a lot for me personally. I don't know about any others, but for myself, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for your research and thank you for sharing that. It's made a massive difference for me. It's given me a lot to think about. So I just want to say thank you.
Hopefully, there was somebody here and I tried to add them and they've gone. Never mind.
I'm going to continue listening. I'm going to bail out, but I just want to say
I think I'm going to kind of close down now anyway, because it was only you that came up and was talking. I hadn't planned on staying for too long. Anyway, So I just wanted to do a live because we haven't all got together for a while. So there have been quite a few people who've been listening in.
That was
Sister
good
Becky's
stuff.
been here. Plate's been here. There's been a few. So
I think even Freddie, if he, I'll contact him and say to him, listen, you got to listen to it. It's well worth it, because I know Freddie feels strongly about God's name, and he loves using God's name. So I'm going to tell him, hey, you must check out the program with LJ. It was amazing. It was fantastic.
So okay, I will. I think I'm going to say good night as well. I'm going to say thank you very much for people listening in. And listen to me ramble on for 2 hours.
It was tolerable. Can you believe it? Listening to you ramble and waffle was actually enjoyable. It hurts me to say that, dude. It hurts me.
You've actually had to agree with me, Gavin.
Yes, it hurts me, to agree with the Kung Fu Panda, obsessed with the KGV. It hurts me badly. But that was cool. It was cool. I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I appreciate everybody listening in, and whether you've enjoyed it or whether you haven't, that's up to you to make up your minds. But hopefully it's given people a little bit of information and allowed, maybe get people to open their mind and think, and actually maybe even better, go and do your own study this, go and look at it. If it's not important to you, don't worry about it. If it is, then go and look at the information. Don't just take the information as factual. Go and have a look at the information, and study it for yourself, as you should do with all of the things that you believe. Go and study it yourself, and make sure that the information that you're believing, or the information that you've read by some scholar, actually lines up with history and the evidence that is there. So I'll say thank you very much, Gavin, for being here and interacting. And I will say good night to everybody. Thank you for listening in. I hope it's been useful. Feel free to contact me on my website. You can contact me there. www.followintruth.com, and you can have a look there. You can send me a message if you have information you think I'm wrong. Send me some information, and I'll have no problem with interacting with that. Tony, it says no time for interaction was all LJ.
I'm glad LJ was in the house. There's nothing wrong with
that. I don't think I offered for if
I
people
think you were open. You were open to people commenting.
If people wanted to come up and talk and discuss that, the information. I was talking because it was just me and Gavin here, and I don't want to listen to Gavin, so I'd rather.
I don't want to listen to you either, but I was forced to, and to agree with you is painful, but I had to. Because I thought you had a good argument. It was great.
But I did offer, numerous times if people wanted to come up and discuss, and everybody was I think I offered that quite a few times if people wanted to come and discuss it with me. I had no problem, but I'm not going to sit in silence, and Gavin's, we can't just sit here. And so I presented the information that I had, and I did so until Gavin wanted to talk, or question was brought up in the chat. So it was, anybody was free to come up and discuss and push back if they wanted to, or agree, or look at information, or ask, where's that information, or can we have a look at that? I think I offered that, so I'll leave it there. But I will say thank you very much for everybody listening in. So I appreciate that. Gavin, thank you very much for being here, and I'm sure that Freddie will be back soon. I hope so.
Yes. Thanks, LJ.
Okay. So I will say good night.
Good night, LJ. Thank you.
Good night. Peace out. Shalom all.